Hi, everyone. I'm Janae Hawkins. I lead partnerships for makers and so excited to continue the conversation of diversity, equity, and inclusion as we are continuing to share the mic now. And today I am so excited for none other than the SVP, Chief Diversity Officer of Omnicom, founder, executive producer, and president of ADCOLOR. And a Makers at Board member. I am so excited to be talking to this woman who has numerous awards, is the queen of mentoring, because you're the queen of mentoring. And you're the what? Hope dealer, passionate, heart saver, all of that.
Yes.
Right?
I'm the heart director.
Yeah.
Because it's like a play on being in advertising. Actually, Christina J. Powell, who worked with me, gave me that title because she's like, you're always leading with your heart. And so I made it officially a part of my bio.
Heart director and passionate hope dealer. There we go.
Yes.
So excited to be talking to none other than the Tiffany R. Warren. Don't forget the R. So excited. Hi, lady.
Hi.
People don't even realize you have been such a good sister friend and got me through this quarantine, like the past 4 months.
Thank you. I give it right back to you.
Yeah, I don't even know how many times we've talked on the phone and FaceTime, but this is what this is going to feel like the entire time, people.
Yes.
Like a FaceTime conversation. So you're just getting a peek into it. So we have to start with your why. I've been having a lot of conversations with people that are called to do their work and not just in position in their career. And you are, my dear, one of those people. And I really believe that God has called you to do this work.
Thank you.
So I want to know about your why. What started this journey to diversity and inclusion, and why have you cared so much? The past 20 years you've been investing and been a huge champion of D&I.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to pinpoint the why. I mean, I think it started even before, I could really form sentences. I just think that the family that I came into had generations of service, whether that's the house painter, which is my grandfather, or, my grandmother who worked at a candy factory, my great-grandmother, who worked at a candy factory in Boston for 34 years, but then also was a nanny. And so I look at how my family members throughout, and there's such a long list, teachers, nurses, and how they were committed to service. And so I think there's something true about a generational imprint that one has that you inherit from your family members without you even knowing, And so being committed to service is my why, because I had so many examples of people living beautiful lives and courageous lives and still being true to themselves, but then being of service to others. So I got that lesson pretty early, and it became my why, not only during my educational journey, but now obviously through my professional journey.
Wow. Thank you for that.
You're
always
welcome.
It's back with grandparents and great-grandparents.
Literally.
Always.
We talk about our nanas all the time. Because my Nana is Nana, and then you said?
My grandma.
And
she's in here somewhere. She may not be commenting, but she wanted to see everybody. She knows Tiffany, so she's in here and wanted to not join to see her baby, but to see Tiffany.
And I'm actually under a photo in my house of my grandparents, their wedding photo. And I have a wall of my ancestors in back of me, but when I got the Frederick Douglass Award from the National Urban League, there was no other place to put the medal but on the picture of, my grandparents who started the family.
Wow.
And so, when I get to look at it every morning, but you can see a little bit of the photo and the medal behind me.
And I was so inspired when you showed me that photo. I was reminded of a Beyonce song, Black Parade.
Yes.
Ancestors on the wall, the ghost chit chat.
Yes.
So yeah, that is amazing. They're always watching over us. So let's talk about you being a Black woman that runs a nonprofit, ADCOLOR, and some of the challenges during this pandemic and how you've been able to rally behind and get this community together. Because thankfully, I have witnessed your greatness and your heart and vision for ADCOLOR and that community. And attending the conference last year, and I'm so grateful to be a part of that. So how have you been able to maneuver during the pandemic and keeping this community together?
I think most of us who run organizations or even events, had a response to the pandemic the same way. I think it was shock. I think it was sobering, but then I immediately transformed that shock to awe.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just in awe of whoever the force is, whoever you pray to, stop the world enough for us to stop and think about like what are we doing? And then also giving us the ability in this, what seems like a difficult time, to actually innovate and be creative. And so I picked my, sad face up off my couch, this very couch I'm sitting on. And I just thought about like, I need to be there for that community. We created something really special that still can be translated and also transferred online.
Right.
But I first had to get myself together. I think that often when you are a woman who's in positions of power, or who have titles, or who are running things, you often are not the first person that people think of that need that care, that need that self-care. Right. And what I'm really good at, and it's pretty legendary, is I know about self-care. Because I couldn't manage.
Sis? Yes.
No, I mean, I couldn't manage, the two worlds that I manage if I didn't take time to really understand the importance of checking out. And I think people see when I'm on the run, but I do just as much checking out and checking on myself. And so for me, I had to take care of myself, and I took the time to do that. And then it was like, we need to get going. And so right now we're in a really beautiful time for ADCOLOR, where the creativity is off the charts. People are engaged, excited, just throwing out so many great ideas, feeling energized. And then that's spilling over into their personal lives and their work lives. And that's what we've always been for people. And that's what we're going to continue to be. So, for me, I went from shock, and then I went to awe. And now I'm in a space of being very grateful for this moment, to be able to grow my organization in a way that honestly may or may not have happened if COVID didn't happen.
Right. That's a great point. And you taught me that too, from facials to taking out time, like the small things that matter for self-care. You actually made fun of me in my self-care moment this weekend. I won't tell people what it was. I will. I was watching a Disney movie, and
you were. Yeah, you
honored
were.
that. I needed it.
No, and the thing is, I honored you by saying that, okay, I want to apologize publicly for maybe razzing you a little bit. So I'm sorry.
You didn't.
I think as a leader, you can say sorry. But then myself, and then I recognize, okay, my self-care is anytime the Goonies comes on TV. Now, mind you, I have the DVD and the Blu-ray. I got it all. But when it comes on TV, I literally stop what I'm doing, and I'm like 10 years old again. And I'm watching that, and I'm watching it from beginning to end. And I think that, there's different movies for different generations. I think before even the Goonies, my go-to movie to just like feel great and to be inspired was The Wiz. And there's a particular song that Lena Horne sings that she hits the first note, and I'm ugly crying. I'm literally ugly crying. Like, my neighbors are like, what's going on with her? Oh, she's watching The Wiz again. But it's the song, it's called If You Believe. And the words of it are just so powerful, like for this time. It's like, if you believe in yourself, I mean, as I believe in you, it's too much. It's one of my favorite songs. It's one of my favorite songs.
Same. Well, good. I'm thinking about too, going back to ADCOLOR. I think about you all's mantra of rising up and reaching back. That is the most simple but most profound thing that you can do as a leader. And I'm constantly reminded of that during this time, as so many D&I efforts are happening, right? And so I want to talk about what you think is the importance of sponsorship and the power of transformative relationships.
Oh, yeah. I mean, okay. Go, Janae, with your little transformative relationships. I love that. I'm going to use that in a sentence in the future.
I may have gotten it from you, to be honest.
I know. I was like, I like that. I think the power of sponsorship is really simple, because I've had people do it for me. It's blocking and tackling so that I can have a clear way to what my vision and my goal is. And sometimes my goal is stated, and sometimes it's not. And, I've often said, and I actually heard this on the Maker stage, so I'm going to give a plug for the Maker stage, when there was a conversation with Lena Waithe. And she said this simple thing that transformed the way that I look at allyship. And so she was asked, like, what can we do? And forgive me if I can't remember the interviewer, but she said, as a white woman, what can I do? And then Lena was like, just get out of our way, just get out the way. And so I think when people heard that, it was like a little intense, but I knew exactly what she meant. I think particularly when you're a subject matter expert, you know, you're on your game and you know what you need to do, and you have the autonomy, you have the authority, and you have the support. The sky's the limit for you. And so I've been given that in spades, particularly at Omnicom, and certainly by my ADCOLOR family, who trust my vision. But then, at Omnicom, with a huge company like that, I think just providing me with that opportunity to really grow in my knowledge and my power and speak truth to power sends a message that no, PR campaign that any company does. I think what people have to understand is that onboarding for a company happens way before anyone has the first interview. And so part of the way that executives are able to move in the world as a representative of your company is really the beginning of onboarding, whether you're an executive of color or not. So for me, transformative relationships are the thing that have given me the opportunities to leapfrog in my career, but also have given me opportunities to grow in ways that no amount of training or self-directed learning would give me. So I feel transformed by the allies and by the partners that I have who understand the complexity of their privilege and use it in a way as it relates to me that moves me forward and takes nothing from them. That's the best ally, is someone who's like, I understand the nuances, the complexity, and sometimes just there's simplicity in it as well. And I'm going to use that to move those who may not have the same privilege forward. So I have a certain type of privilege because I've made a way in this industry for Black women or people of color. I understand that privilege, and then I use that privilege that I have in order to move others ahead and open doors as well. You sure do. Yeah.
You sure do. You have over 100 mentees. How?
A little.
How?
What happened?
You have over 100 mentees. You continuously pour into other people. You are the definition of sponsorship. And I joke all the time and say you're the female version of Clarence Avon. We talk about this
all the time. But I'm grateful for Facebook and I'm grateful for LinkedIn, because it was a little overwhelming before those two things came along to mentor. I've always peer mentored. I mean, I started mentoring because there's evidence of it. You know how like you do an archaeological dig? Well, my archaeological dig is in the scrapbook that my mom prepared for me.
Yes.
And sometimes I'll go back to like, report cards and just remind myself that I'm smart. Sometimes I feel like I'm not. And I was like, oh, I got those A's in the second grade. But I look further back and I have it's kind of like a report that they did for kids that went through, oh my God, I just blanked out. Head Start, sorry. And so it was a report that they did to give to parents to say, hey, your kid is as smart as you think they are, or your kid is not as smart as you think they are. Like you get those two reports. So luckily I got the report that confirmed what my mom knew, that I was a different kind of kid, which is a phrase I've heard all my life. And now I bestow that title on my niece. But like, I read the report and it was like, Tiffany likes the quiet ones. She's always the first one in the reading circle to lead the reading circle. Tiffany doesn't like when her peers are upset. She's the class mom. Like this is in writing.
And I'm like, still that way.
I know, but I'm like 3.5. Like, I'm like, this is deep. Like, I'm going through this, like, I really was like this. And then they had like the standard stuff, which is she knows her circles, her squares, her triangles, and she can cut paper. But then they had this whole other like psychological profile. And I read it as the beginnings of like what leadership looks like. And that leadership happens so early on. I think people or parents sometimes possibly wait until their kid distinguishes themselves in dance class or at soccer. But my mom knew pretty early on and put me in programs to support that I really had a calling to like, support and help people in a certain way. Now, I didn't know that it was diversity, equity, and inclusion, but it was something. And so when I look at all the activities she put me in, it really was to give me sails and give me wind to be strong, because she could see for me what I couldn't see at the time, because I was like, itty bitty Tiffany. So I'm always grateful for my mom, and she's tired of being overthanked, but I can't thank her enough, because, she she put me on a, I mean, she hates when I say this publicly, so please, I hope there's a statute of limitations. But she put me on a plane at 3.5 to participate in a summer program. I was turning 4, but I was a tall 4. And I think about like my niece going on a plane at that age, and I'm like, what? And she just knew, like early on. She's like, I don't know how she knew. I think parents know. So I think the one piece of advice I would give, even though this wasn't the question per se, but is, you know, look at what your child is saying early on, because they're speaking to you.
Right.
You know, my niece is speaking to her family, to her mother, my mom, her grandmother, and to me as her aunt. She spoke to us pretty early on, not by words, but by deeds, that, you know, she's going to be this kind of human. And so collectively, we're like, okay, we're going to support that. I think you know, getting handed that from my mom's, you know, mother and father in that generation, it was handed to my mom. My mom then handed it to me. And now I have the pleasure of handing that kind of recognition of spirit to my niece, but also to my mentees.
See, this is why I needed this blessing on a Monday morning. That was amazing. I mean, you have people in the comments like, that's amazing, and investing in their kids and saying how they're cultivating them too. Like, people are on board and snapping. That was really beautiful. And shout out to Mama Bird for investing in 3-year-old Tiffany. Love her for investing so early, because we needed it and the world needed it.
Oh,
now, let's talk about Chief Diversity Officers. This past week, in the Wall Street Journal, there was an article that was released talking about the high turnover for Chief Diversity Officer roles and the lack of resources, lack of support from senior executives. You know, I really need us to unpack the why of that. Why do you think that CDOs aren't given that support, the elevation that, you know, whatever it is that they need, and why are they not comparable to other roles in the C-suite? Because we don't talk about, you know, it's hard to think about CDO roles and the bottom line and profits, but other roles you think about that, the CFO, the CMO. And so I want to ask you, being in that role, why is that?
Yeah, that article, just the breadth and depth of my career, felt like reading a memoir a little bit, because I think in any role that I've had, and not my most recent, by most recent meaning Omnicom, which I've been there for 11 years. Time flies, man. It's, you know, good moisturizer. But where where I'm at is that, you know, very early on when I decided that this was my path, and I decided that in the summer of '99, I knew that I wanted to support diversity and equity and inclusion in any role that I took, because I went through Inroads, which is this incredible business internship program. I was an intern with a company that changed its name 3 times. So every time I came back from school break, I was working for a different company, but the same. And that company is Verizon. So I started when it was New England Telephone. I was New England Telephone. Then I came back the next summer. It was 9X.
Like that too.
Then I came back the next summer and it was Verizon. And then I left to go work in advertising. Yeah. But I knew pretty early on, because of the work of Inroads, that I loved, when I interacted with people who were in this role within Inroads, they were happy, they were fulfilled, they had passion, They had purpose. I'm like, that's it. I don't know how I'm going to get there, but that's the job that I want. Right. And so every job that I had, I was like raising my hands. I got you. I'm going to take care of the DE&I for said agency. No, don't hire. I got it. You know, I was like raising my hand and then still doing my day job. So that was always like the plan. And then in the summer of '99, which was my 25th birthday, I had this memorable party where, because I have, you know, memorable parties at all my milestones. But my 25th, I stood up and I said, yeah, I'm not going to be here in September. Like, I just don't feel like I'm going to be here. And so what people thought was that I was talking about a terminal illness. But what it was is that I was in Boston, and I knew that the road to what I want to do was going to be outside of Boston. So they misinterpreted it. To this day, people still think that I was like, but I'm still here. So it wasn't about a terminal illness. But what it did was I set an intention that I knew that my journey was greater than what I could ever do in Boston. At least I knew that. And then that fall, I got the biggest job of my life as a 25-year-old running diversity for the advertising industry, and had no blueprint, no manual, no nothing. I just had spirit and interest to change the narrative around people of color within advertising, and I thought I could do it through this internship program, and I hope I did. But the job of CDO from beginning has always been, or even the job around DE&I, and I speak from an industry perspective, under-resourced, undervalued, underthanked, undersupported, undermined.
Wow.
And through the years and sort of conversating with people and figuring out how to navigate those landmines I just talked about, and those sort of moments of, can I go further? Can I climb this mountain anymore? And then you think about John Lewis, who just passed away, and he talked about getting into good trouble. And I do consider CDOs good troublemakers, you know, because we have to work within a structure, but at the same time, we have to speak truth to power, and we have to be disruptive in order to move things forward.
Right.
So it's a really, really uniquely hard job. And there are really great parts to it: CSR, philanthropy, growing relationships with not-for-profits, and with organizations like Makers and GLAD and Ad Council and all these wonderful organizations that I'm a part of, AAF, you know, I can go down the list. But when in the quiet of my mind, I always say a prayer of protection and cover, because I know that I'm responsible for this part of the timeline, and I have to do as much as I can with this part of the timeline, and then work with my mentees and work with others to take care of the next part. So when I was given the job of, now the baton was sort of passed and said, Tiff, we did what we could in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and almost in the 90s as well. Now it's your turn. I took that responsibility very seriously, because I had the elders of the industry pour into me, tell me what their pain points were, tell me what didn't work, tell me what worked. I listened. I sat at their feet and I listened. And then I took that in, remixed it, you know, Gen X style, and then, you know, like went out and did what, you know, I could do in this role. And so, you know, I talked to CDOs who were part of multiple industries, and we all, you know, kind of share the same story, which is, you know, we have like 7 jobs in one, where pandemic specialists, civil rights attorneys, crisis managers, counselors, grief counselors, and not grief in the sense of like, you know, but grief counselors, that grief of those that don't get seen, grief of those that get silenced. Where do you think that all goes to in a company? It comes to us. And so I think it's about taking a step back. If you're in a position of power as a CEO and you have a direct, or a CDO has direct reporting relationship to you,
right,
and open that door wider, and make sure that you know, CDO is supported, that has the right advocates, that has the right, you know, connections to systems within the organization to move and be able to actually create real change. It's a really unique position, one that's been around for a very long time. So many incredible people created the blueprint for it, and I'm grateful, because now hopefully I can, you know, I work with talking with people so that I pour into them so that they can be stronger for the next part of the timeline.
I mean, these sound bites, you have people in here, grief of those who don't get seen. That is a powerful statement there that people are resonating with. So what is your hope for D&I roles in the future? Because that's a long journey between 99 and now.
I mean, one of my favorite things to do is rock star people that just are in that position where they're just thankless, but their role is so important for a company. And I think part of why I started ADCOLOR, because there was a recognition gap in our industry where I didn't see us being recognized for the full breadth of our career. Now, they were throwing roses at us for Hall of Fame if we made it that far. And let me say that again, if we made it that far.
Hello?
And then sometimes maybe one level under, but no recognition of rising stars and innovators, and it just wasn't. And so I remember very distinctly when I started ADCOLOR, someone's like, you're going to run out of people to honor in 2 years. Someone said that to me. I remember his name. I remember him saying it with such authority. And he was like, you're going to run out. And the fact, A, we haven't. Secondly, the hope for me is that people recognize that visibility is the key, one of the keys to feeling the power of your success. And for people of color, it's not about like what's the word, grandstanding, or like, ooh, the minute, what I love is the minute people get recognized, they turn it right back around and shine it on everybody else. Like, I love that about us. And so that to me had to be,
I've seen you at ADCOLOR. I'm like, where am I? This is beautiful. A room full of Black and brown professionals honoring one another and celebrating. And celebrating in a way that's like affirming, that's like, you know, finger snapping, that's like, you know, you hear amens when people are delivering their speeches. You know, I remember very specifically there's been a lot of amazing speeches, but in particular when Bose won our first rock star award. People knew her, Pepsi, you know, she was just incredible already, but she said this incredible line that I actually recite to Amin-Ra all the time. And she's like, I walk like I have diamonds in the soles of my feet or my shoes. And that whole, down, people. That was
listen,
good.
That's from a Paul Simon song. But for me, that phrase is so empowering, particularly when you're an executive of color and you're walking through halls where people literally think that, and this is why I have this necklace, you know, as a symbol for me. I don't want to be the unicorn. I don't, like, it's not something where I'm like, woo woo, but it's kind of a recognition of, you know, being in rooms when I'm the only one and people are like, did I just see what I thought I saw? Because, you know, that's how people think of you. Did I just see a horse with something pointed out of its head? You know, when they think of unicorns, it's like they can't believe what they're seeing. But I want to be part of, you can believe what you see and you can also be it. So I'm repurposing that idea of unicorn to say it's not something that's unique. It's actually something that's a beacon for others to follow. So, you know, again, I think about that term, you know, diamonds in the soles of your feet, that she embodies so well. I think about when Janet Mock made her speech about trans visibility when she won the award, when Charles King was talking about, you know, Hollywood needs to see different stories, and he went out and started Macro. Wilson Cruz, who did a powerful documentary about LGBTQIA awareness on TV, being that he was one of the first powerful characters. Like, being surrounded and learning from these giants and these heroes, you can't help but be a good troublemaker. You know what I mean? Because these people are, like, not just changing their own lives, but they're changing the lives of people that are living, but also, you know, changing the lives of people who we don't even know yet, you know, and that's powerful to be around.
It sure is. It sure is. Oh my goodness. I have a couple more questions because everybody is just, they're loving this. So for our white allies who are heads of D&I, what piece of encouragement or advice would you give during this time? And even as you talked about the hope for the future, what would you say to them?
Well, first and foremost, I would say thank you. Because I know even with being white and having privilege, you're still feeling the difficulties of this role. And that now you are built for a time such as this. You're a bridge. You're a bridge. And recognizing the honor of being that bridge between communities that may misunderstand each other or may be fearful of saying the wrong thing or may not say anything at all. Being in that position of power, which in that role of CDO you are, embrace that. Embrace the privilege of that. Embrace the honor of being a bridge builder. And be unafraid. Be unafraid. And also be okay with the awkward silences, the not knowing what to say, the difficulty of conversations you may hear that are not okay. Like, for me in those moments, what's more important for me when I'm in moments where people say the wrong things, the education is more important than the calling out. People put the wrong emphasis on the calling out. Oh my God, I've been called out. Now everyone's gonna.
So true.
The importance for me is you're placing the emphasis on the wrong thing. The emphasis is actually really about educating. We've all been in those moments where people slip or say the wrong thing. Sometimes it's better to take care of it outside the meeting.
Right.
You know, I call them ma'ams, the meeting after the meeting. I'm like, we're going to have a ma'am.
I gotta use that.
Just FYI, a ma'am is going to happen. So just let me know what time you want to talk. And I come at it from an empathetic point of view, but when I'm in that meeting with them, I break it down. So here's where I'm at. I start with, because when I start with here's where I'm at, everybody's like, oh, let me buckle up.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, here's where I'm at.
Yeah.
In the meeting, you probably didn't know, but you silence someone, and that's going to have an impact on their confidence for the rest of their career. So I think how we correct that situation is, and then I'm like prescriptive. Then I'm like, okay, this is what I need you to do, because
Exactly.
I was that junior person. I was that senior person that was silenced. And I had to reconstitute and rebuild myself up every time after every microaggression. So imagine you rebuilding yourself up, your confidence, the way you walk, your swag. When someone either intentionally or unintentionally says something to you that, you know, you're just sitting there and like, you're like, I can't believe it. And then the silence piece is really, I just want to point that out, because even with all my credentials, private school in Boston, private college, years of DE&I work, even I can be silenced. And so I want you to understand that it's not the problem of the junior class within our multiple industries.
Right.
Anyone can be silenced at any level. And for me,
yeah,
what I've learned is that microaggression is personal to the receiver. I don't have to explain to you why you hurt my feelings. No. If I'm hurt and I'm ugly crying in the bathroom, or I'm like putting an out of office, you know, alert because I need to get myself together. I mean, literally, like, when people think about microaggressions, well, can we learn from it? Can we put like a training manual around it? I was like, well, no, you're not going to put a training manual around my pain. No. But what I'm going to do is, once I get myself together and I understand what just happened to me, and I'm not crying as I'm talking about it, and then hopefully that'll be a lesson to you. But until then, I'm not really ready to talk about it, you know, because there's that constant like, well, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's traumatizing. It's traumatizing. Yeah,
you wouldn't in any other situation ask someone how it felt to be in an accident or abused or molested or let's make a manual about it. Right. That's the same as the microaggression.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those I think are the most, that's the most like visceral, hard to track, hard to find, hard to manage, hard to overcome aspect of DE&I in any industry. Is, do you have training to put someone back together again? I doubt it. You know who has training? A therapist. Like, that's how intense it is. Wow. For people who are like, oh, it's just a micro, because people are using it like as a trendy, like, no, it's intense. It's intense.
Yeah, it is. Whew. Okay. Let's pick it back up a little bit, because microaggressions is a trigger word for me. You know this.
Yeah.
So thinking about legacy, you've already mentioned it, as we lost two American civil rights icons over the weekend, Reverend C.T. Vivian and Congressman John Lewis. And it puts this quote in mind: "Ease is a greater threat to progress than hardship," by Denzel Washington. And thinking about our legacy and what we're leaving, because, you know, before you were even conceived, and even myself, right? This work that's put in us is something that we are supposed to be doing. It's our calling. So how do we, as people that are, you know, champions of D&I, continue this legacy that they've put before us, and keep this going? Because it does not stop in civil rights. It does not stop with Black Lives Matter. It is something that is in our company as well. So how do we keep this going?
Yeah, I mean, for the first time, like in a long time in doing this work, I feel the load is a little less heavy. And that's because people have come to the table that has been set for a very long time.
Yeah.
And maybe they were standing outside the room, or they were peeking in, or, you know, they're like, no, you take the seat. No, you take it. Right. And now everyone's like sitting in the seat, and they're like pulling it up to like the edge of the table, you know, the kind of edge where there's no room for your food to fall down. Like, they're really like at the table. Right. And that to me is different. And that's what I love about this time. And I feel showered with support. I feel embraced and surrounded by people who really want to leave a corporate legacy, but are looking at their kids who are growing up in a different world and will not stand for conversation, actions that are not in line with their values that are already imprinted in them.
Right.
Like there's certain things that my 4-year-old niece will not stand for. And she, I mean, beyond this is so much, but she will not stand for.
Right.
And it's already in her, you know, obviously put there by my amazing sister who's a teacher and who, but, you know, she was in my sister's belly and my sister was just giving lessons of, you know, again, just putting wind in her sails. So she knew who she was. Because when I think about, you know, she said something really like, and I never thought about like this. She's like, I'm not going to teach, at least on my watch. And this goes back to how my family looked at racism. She's like, I'm not going to, I think there's powerful historic lessons, but to teach racism outright without teaching the history of who you are is an imbalance. Because if you take in racism as a young child and you don't have that support of that, you come from kings and queens and how your ancestors made it to this country, and you don't look at it in that way, there's an imbalance. And so for me, you know, for my educational process, you know, I think about, you know, and I've said this, and this just came to my psyche as I was going through the last 4 or 5 weeks, is that educationally I received 4 hours of education on my history as part of America. And I'm being kind. But I know every flaw, every pimple, every generation of Christopher Columbus and other people. And I think about the imbalance of that.
Every pimple. Yeah.
Every pimple. You know, I think about the imbalance of that and how can you sustain your energy and your core if there's an imbalance on your importance and your contributions to the country you live in.
Right.
So we have to reimagine education around history in our public schools. We have to reimagine training in corporate America that doesn't center on pain, but centers on progress, and not just biases, but anti-racism. We have to like have a different vocabulary in terms of how we talk about this time in our country's history, or, you know, we think we're making history, but we're actually repeating it. And I'm not on the side of repeating history. I'm not down for that.
Speak, Tiff. Okay. That was, oh my goodness. I got to watch this again so I can take notes. Like I'm hosting, I can't take notes.
You know. Well, I'm only inspired by your energy. We always have talks like this, like,
always.
And then we finally were like, let's just like make it live. Like, let's just, yeah.
Sometimes everybody, while talking to Tiffany, I actually do take notes. It's that real. Powerful, prophetic. Okay, so last question.
Sure.
Thinking about legacy again, right? And what we just talked about, and thinking about yours, and the seeds that you've planted, right? You may never, you know, witness the fruit of that tree. And I'm constantly reminded, I'm a huge fan of Hamilton. I've told you this, and I've listened to this soundtrack for years, and to finally visually see it.
I mean, I've seen it 9 times. Like, I don't want to compete. Like, I don't want to compete about Hamilton.
So we're
like, you can be a huge fan, but like, have you seen it 9 times? Like,
okay, but we're competing on live. That's fine.
No, we're not. We're not.
Okay.
We're not.
We can have a ma'am later.
No, I love you. I love you.
I love you too. No, you beat me. I have not watched it 9 times, but that's okay. But like thinking about the legacy of this man, it is now a musical. But what got me in like ugly cry at the end, if people have not watched it, I am so sorry. But his wife carried on his legacy by making sure that everybody knew the works that he did throughout his career.
Yeah.
And so what type of, and that's extremely powerful, because you have to surround yourself with people who are investing not only in your right now, but your tomorrow, and that tomorrow may be when you're long gone and, you know, on to glory. So what is your legacy, and what do you want that to look like? I know you talk about your niece a lot, love her too. But what does that look like?
Couple things. Well,
and what do you want people to say about you?
Well, I thank you for bringing Hamilton, because I was waiting, because I was like, I'm about to bombard. But but the story of tonight, there's some lines in there about I may not live to see the glory. I will certainly join the fight. Let's raise a glass to freedom. Something they'll never take away. And then this whole idea of tomorrow, there'll be more of us.
Be more of us.
This
Yes.
line,
Yes.
I mean, listen, I cried when I saw it in person, and then, you know, to watch it, and I watched it with Amin Ra. I mean, what she took from the whole thing was, I'm not throwing away my shot. Like, I tried to get her to like the other songs.
But that's a good one for
Yeah, that's the one that really sat in her soul.
Okay.
But, you know, this whole idea of there'll be more of us.
Yeah.
You know, when I think about John Lewis and I think about C.T. Vivian, who were arrested on the same day in 1961 and then went on to glory together.
Yep.
Their lives were intertwined in a way that few of us will understand. But one thing is clear. They made a choice pretty early on that discomfort was something they were just going to live with. And that discomfort came in many forms. Certainly his moment on the bridge, Reverend Vivian speaking truth to power to cops, asking them why. Like, it was a clip from the 1960s, but that could have been a clip from like yesterday, him challenging the cops on the street.
Yeah.
And then you have John Lewis, who, you know, beyond being the lion, you know, representative that he was, and how he mentored the young representatives, and he never missed a meeting, and he always imparted history, and he would let little boys and little girls come in and make votes for him, because these kids, he knew he was planting something. He was very aware of the idea of the mustard seed, and the idea of, I may not change the world, but I will, you know, I will be able to implant in somebody who will. You know, that's a famous quote from Tupac.
Tupac, yes.
You know, and this is coming from people who changed the world. So it's so interesting that there's humility wrapped up in that, but there's also hope, in the sense that, you know, what he's saying is that whatever we do is going to plant seeds that will grow, that may grow now or may grow later. And I'm always sensitive to that. I came to self-actualization very early on because I chose this work. And when you choose work like this, you have to remove ego. You have to put humility first. You have to understand that your roses come from opening doors for others and pushing people ahead of you. I remember very specifically when I was running MATE, the kids would put together their money from their internship. And they would, like, you know, get me something from Tiffany. Like, they're not creative. My name's Tiffany. They would get me like a little necklace or, and I always told them, I was like, well, first of all, I was like, if you're going to do it, give me a gift receipt. I would always return it, and I would always put the money into, like, donating it to a charity. I understood why they were doing it, but I told them, my thank you is your success. I don't need trinkets. I don't need necklaces. I love a long thank you note, but I don't need necklaces. And what I was trying to teach them is that when you go on in your career, it's not about the prizes you receive. It's about the people's lives you change. That's your prize. You have to look at it differently. And so my prize are not the trophies I have, which most of them are in my basement. I'm not dissing the organizations that gave it to me, but I don't want to go and have these daily reminders of things that are very specific moments in time. It's always about what's next and who am I helping next. And so that hopefully is a strong legacy that I am now reaping the rewards of, because I'm seeing my mentees do that in their own work, which makes makes me so happy.
Oh, well, your legacy will continuously live on because you are doing God's work, honey. Thank you. You know,
thank you. Well, thank you for those braids, Janae. I mean, you're giving realness with those braids.
I knew you were going to say, see, as you drink your tea, stop it. Thank you, honey. And that bob is swinging.
I mean, it's branding. It's branding. You got to brand. I consider you part of Tiffany and Company. You're part of Tiffany and Company.
I am part of the crew, and I am so honored. Oh my goodness! You know what? I looked up, and it is 12:45. Girl, we've talked.
Yeah, we ain't got time to stay on here all day.
No, we don't. But listen, everybody was loving your comments. Okay, listen, maybe we have to do this again. I mean,
listen,
all of what you said was amazing. So
a big shout out to the Makers team. Sitting at that table, particularly with my fellow board members, is such a powerful recognition of allyship. You know what Dylan has done, what the team has done, Lori. You know how much I appreciate and respect you guys, and you always take my calls and you always listen to me when I had this grand idea of partnering with Makers and ADCOLOR, because I wanted to show that solidarity to the industry. That we're both aligned in supporting diversity, equity, and inclusion. We
Yes.
may do it in different and unique ways, but we're all going towards the same end goal, which is equity and inclusion for all. So, and you know, Janae, I think you're a superstar. And one day, the IG is going to flip, and I'm going to be getting all the deets from you. You superstar, you. So this was amazing.
You are so sweet. Thank you. I adore you. I love you. We'll have our ma'am after this. But thank you.
You gotta say it the right way though, ma'am.
Ma'am. Well, you
ma'am.
know country.
And you say it so much better. My mom loves your accent, ma'am.
East Boogie in Tennessee. That's the accent.
Right.
Thank you, Tiffany. I love you.
Thank you, sweetie. Love you too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, that was a blessing. I was not expecting all of that. I am touched and moved. Tiffany is a dear friend, and I'm so glad that we can have this conversation. And I encourage everyone to think about, investing more in your passion than a position, because obviously this is something that Tiffany has done, and it is working extremely well, and she'll get all of the rewards from it. This is amazing. Thank you all. We're going to continue these DE&I conversations. Love you guys. Love, peace, and blessings. Bye-bye.